Hi and welcome to this short video. I'm Nick Davis of N Davis Training. Now this actual video is a bit of a follow-up to my previous one on what it means to fail, and if you watch that then you'll know that fail doesn't really mean fail as in not succeeding, but actually first attempt in learning. And if you want to check out that video, if you haven't seen it, then a link for it will be coming up very soon. Therefore in this video we're going to move on a little further and actually look at a very simple yet effective model which can be used to establish what it is we need to learn and to understand how we can use this to improve performance next time. And it's something which I've used quite extensively in training for a number of years, and the good news is that it's very easy to remember. Now the model is actually known as the Experiential Learning Model, or ELC for short, and the concept was first proposed by David Kolb in 1984. Now, although the model might appear a little complex at first sight, it is actually quite straightforward because it bases itself on the principle that learners, and this includes adults, learn through experience. Now, the version which I've always tended to use is the simplified derivative version, which I always remember as what, so what, now what. So by using the ELC, what we're effectively doing is allowing the cognitive process to operate both systematically and analytically so that we can proceed through what's known as the 4 stages of competence. And this is where the learner progresses from what's known as unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence, and then on to conscious competence, and finally what's known as unconscious competence. Now basically what this means is that when learning, say for instance, a skill, the learner goes through a process of being completely clueless about how to perform the skill right through to a state whereby they can actually perform it almost perfectly and without effort, without even having to consciously think about it. And to actually find out more about this model, you can check out my blog post, for which the link is coming up very soon. But in order to ensure that the learner's journey through the 4 stages of competence, particularly stages 2 and 3, is effective, then they also need to learn and understand how the ELC process works, which is effectively learning by mistakes or errors, etc., etc. And this is especially relevant when learning physical skills such as physical intervention, self-defense and breakaway, or martial arts, but could also be equally applied to other skills such as communication or managing conflict. So let's have a look at how the ELC actually works. Well, first of all, there is the experience of doing or performing the skill or action, in other words, actually trying it out. So let's say an instructor is teaching a physical skill, such as maybe a simple low-level restraint technique, and the learners have tried the technique after it's been explained and demonstrated. After having done this, the first stage of the ELC is what? In other words, what happened? Did the learner fully understand the skill and perform it correctly? If not, what was it that wasn't correct? What was it that the learner got wrong? And this is effectively the identification stage. So regarding our low-level restraint technique, after having been shown how to perform that technique in question, if some, if not all of the learners don't for some reason fully understand the skill, then the instructor or trainer needs to identify what it is they don't understand so this can be addressed. And this brings us to the second stage. So what? At this point, having identified what happened, it's then necessary to understand why it happened. So this is the analysis and evaluation stage, where we effectively try and figure out why something happened the way it did. Now, this might not necessarily be something negative, such as an error or mistake. It could also be that something went well. And it's also certainly worthwhile analysing this so it can be replicated again. The main point of this is to gain an understanding so that the learner can move forward. So going back to our restraint technique, at this stage the instructor should be analysing why the learners didn't understand what they were learning and drawing conclusions from this. The third stage of the ELC is now what? So having identified and evaluated what happened, we now have to decide what needs to be done to bring the learner back on track. In other words, what can be done better or improved upon when we try performing the skill again? Or, if the performance was positive, what can be done to build upon this to make it even better next time? So in the case of our course participants learning the restraint skill, having decided why they didn't understand the technique, the instructor now needs to decide what he or she needs to do to improve the learner's understanding. And finally, this brings us back to the skill or action itself, where the learner tries to perform it again. So in the case of the restraint technique, the learners would have another go at practicing it. Again, if they still have difficulties, then we continue around the ELC until this improves their performance. Now, the key to perfecting any skill is repetition. However, without the aid of the ELC process, this would actually be counterproductive if we don't actually understand what it is we need to improve on in the first place. And this also relates to something sometimes called the law of specificity, which will be the subject of another future video, all being well. Now, it's also worth mentioning that the ELC is not only useful in the training cycle, but also when debriefing actual incidents in order to learn from and improve practice and procedures. And this is especially useful for staff in frontline roles such as security, police, health and social care, and other similar roles. And it's also an essential process to understand if you're aiming to become an expert at something. So if you wish to progress and develop in a subject or a particular skill, it's essential that you identify and learn from your mistakes, understand what you need to do better next time, and then do it. This, along with the process of repetition and an understanding of the 4 stages of competence, will certainly guarantee the path to expertise, as long as you stick with it. So that about wraps it up for ELC. If you have any questions about this video or any of the subjects covered in the other tutorial videos, then you're very welcome to contact me on mail@nicholas-davis.com, and I'll try and answer them as best as I can. So once again, thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.